In the late 21st century, when technology had reached new heights and the world was divided between peace and power, a man named Dr. Elias Wren was working on something no one could imagine. He was a brilliant biophysicist, a man who believed that the human body could go beyond its limits if science learned how to merge life with machine. His mind was filled with dreams that many called madness. To him, it was not madness, it was evolution. Dr. Wren worked for the International Defense Research Council, an organization that focused on creating the future of warfare. They had built drones that could think, armor that could heal itself, and satellites that could predict enemy movements. But Dr. Wren wanted something more. He wanted to create a soldier who didn't need machines because he would be the machine, a perfect fusion of man, mind, and metal. His secret project was called Harbinger, a word that meant the one who brings change. Hundreds of soldiers from across the world volunteered for this mysterious program. They didn't know what they were signing up for. All they knew was that it would change them forever. Each was tested for physical strength, endurance, and neural stability. Many failed. Some got sick. Some went mad. But then came Captain Adrian Voss. Adrian was different. He was calm, focused, and fearless. A war hero who had already faced death more than once. He had served in the Pacific Defense Force, known for surviving a mission that had wiped out his entire unit. People said he had a strange instinct, almost like he could feel danger before it arrived. To Dr. Wren, Adrian's brainwaves were unlike anything he had ever seen. His neural patterns were clean, rhythmic, and perfectly aligned, like a song played in perfect tune. He was the ideal subject for Harbinger. The experiment began in a hidden laboratory under the icy ground of northern Norway. The place was silent, cold, and full of machines that hummed like they were alive. The walls were lined with silver tubes carrying blue liquid that glowed faintly in the dark. Every scientist there knew they were standing on the edge of something dangerous, something that could change what it meant to be human. Dr. Wren explained the plan to Adrian in simple words. "We will introduce nanostructures into your cells," he said. "They will not replace you. They will learn from you. They will grow with you." Adrian listened quietly. He wasn't afraid. "And if they fail?" he asked. Dr. Wren hesitated. "Then your body will reject them and—" He didn't finish the sentence. Both of them knew what that meant. The process started on a cold December night. Adrian lay inside a transparent chamber filled with a thick, colorless gas. Small robotic arms injected millions of microscopic nanostructures into his bloodstream. The machines around him beeped softly, showing numbers that changed faster than anyone could read. The nanostructures were designed to connect with his nerves, his bones, and even his DNA. They were not machines in the normal sense. They were living systems built from quantum-level particles that could reshape themselves. At first, everything seemed fine. Adrian's pulse remained steady. His breathing was calm. But after 10 minutes, his body began to tremble. His heart rate jumped and his blood pressure spiked. The nanostructures were being rejected. His veins turned dark as they started to burn under his skin. The scientist shouted to shut the system down. Dr. Wren's voice cut through the noise. "No. Give it one more minute." He believed Adrian could survive it. He believed his mind was strong enough to synchronize with the nanostructures. Then something no one expected happened. Adrian's body stopped shaking. His pulse returned to normal. The dark lines on his skin faded. And then, for a moment, every machine in the lab stopped working. The lights flickered and a strange vibration passed through the room. Instruments began showing impossible readings. Adrian's body mass was fluctuating as if he was getting heavier and lighter at the same time. The scientist froze in disbelief. Dr. Wren looked at the monitors, then at Adrian and whispered. It worked. When Adrian opened his eyes, they were glowing faintly, like light was reflecting from inside them. He sat up slowly and the air around him seemed to bend, as if gravity itself was uncertain about what it was holding. His skin looked normal, but under the surface, millions of nanostructures had formed a network that no one fully understood. He was no longer just human. His body had become a living system, a fusion of flesh and energy, a human reactor that obeyed no known rule of physics. In the following days, Adrian's recovery shocked everyone. His wounds healed in seconds. His strength tripled. His reaction time became faster than any computer's prediction. When he moved, The sensors around him picked up electromagnetic disturbances as if he carried his own gravitational field. One day, while testing his balance, he accidentally bent a metal table without touching it. The metal simply folded toward him, drawn by a force the scientist couldn't measure. Dr. Wren documented everything carefully. He wrote in his notes, "Adrian Voss is the first being to generate reactive energy at a biological level. His cells emit power that cannot be classified as chemical or nuclear. It's something new, something beyond physics." The team was stunned. They ran every test imaginable, but none could explain what was happening inside his body. His blood contained patterns of energy that repeated like codes. His bones had become harder than titanium but weighed less than air. His body temperature stayed constant even in freezing conditions. But as his powers grew, so did the unease among the scientists. Adrian had moments of silence where he would stare at his reflection for hours, as if trying to remember who he used to be. Sometimes he would talk to himself in a low voice, saying he could feel the hum of the world around him, the pulse of machines, even the movement of atoms. He told Dr. Wren once, "Everything has a sound now. I can hear energy moving. I can feel it waiting." Dr. Wren didn't know whether to be proud or terrified. Outside the secret facility, rumors began to spread. Some said the council had created a living weapon. Others claimed they were playing with forces that could destroy the planet. Only a few people knew the truth, that Adrian Voss had survived something that should have killed him, and that he was no longer limited by human biology. He could manipulate energy, gravity, and matter in ways that broke every law of nature. Dr. Wren's excitement turned into obsession. He started dreaming of creating more like Adrian. "He is proof," Wren said during one meeting. "Proof that evolution can be designed." But deep inside, he knew something was different about this case. The process had worked not because of science alone, but because of Adrian himself. His mind had somehow accepted the impossible. The nanostructures hadn't taken over. They had become part of his consciousness. As the months passed, Adrian began to realize his own body was changing faster than anyone expected. His senses expanded. He could see radio waves, feel magnetic fields, and predict the movement of particles. His muscles no longer worked like human muscles. They reacted to thought alone. When he ran, the floor beneath him vibrated. When he breathed, the air around him shimmered. It was as if the world was adjusting to his presence. Dr. Wren often watched him from behind the glass, wondering if he had gone too far. "What are you now?" he asked one evening. Adrian smiled faintly. "I don't know," he said, "but I can feel something growing inside me, something that doesn't sleep." The scientists continued their research, unaware that they were standing at the edge of a discovery that would soon rewrite reality itself. For now, Adrian Voss was still human in appearance, still capable of thought and emotion. But beneath his calm eyes, a storm was forming. A power too great to measure and too dangerous to control. The experiment that was supposed to enhance a man had created something else entirely. Something that breathed energy, felt gravity, and could reshape the laws of the universe with a single thought. The world didn't know it yet, but a new era had begun. The era of the human warship. Weeks passed after Adrian Voss became something no one could define. The scientists around him were still trying to understand how his body worked. They took endless scans, blood samples, and measurements, but nothing made sense. His body had become its own system, like a living engine that obeyed rules unknown to science. He didn't eat, yet he never got weak. He didn't sleep for days, yet he was never tired. Sometimes his body glowed faintly in the dark, like a heartbeat made of light. Dr. Elias Wren was both amazed and afraid. He had created something beyond imagination, but he also knew that every rule they broke came with a risk they couldn't yet see. Adrian was polite and quiet, still the disciplined soldier he had always been. But there was something different about him now. His eyes moved like they could see through things. When people walked past him, the air around him seemed to shift, as if gravity itself was changing slightly. The scientists tried to test his abilities carefully. They began with small exercises, measuring how much weight he could lift or how fast he could move. But the results went far beyond what anyone expected. He lifted a 10-ton machine with one hand. He moved so fast that high-speed cameras couldn't catch his movement. When they tested his reaction time, he touched the sensor before the signal was even sent. It was as if he could predict what was going to happen before it happened. Dr. Wren realized that Adrian's body wasn't just reacting faster, it was operating in a completely new way. His cells had become active energy sources. They didn't depend on oxygen or food like normal cells. Instead, they generated a kind of power that the scientists couldn't name. Every test showed small pulses of radiation around him, but they weren't harmful. They were stable, controlled, and strangely beautiful. It was as if his body was rewriting the laws of physics from the inside out. But soon strange things began to happen that no one could control. One night, when Adrian was resting in his chamber, the entire laboratory shook. Alarms went off, lights flickered, and computers froze. When the staff ran to check the cause, they found Adrian floating a few inches above the floor. His body was surrounded by a faint silver mist. His eyes were closed, and he was breathing slowly, as if dreaming. Every machine nearby stopped working. The air felt heavy and still. Then suddenly he opened his eyes, and everything crashed back to normal. When Dr. Wren asked him what had happened, Adrian said softly, "I don't know. I was dreaming, but the dream felt real. I could feel everything, the ground, the air, the light. It was like I was part of it." That frightened Wren more than anything else. If Adrian's mind could now affect energy fields even in his sleep, then he wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was becoming something that the world wasn't ready to understand. Despite the risks, the military wanted results. The council began sending secret orders. They wanted to know how far this new human weapon could go. Dr. Wren protested. He said Adrian was still unstable, still learning to control himself. But they didn't listen. They demanded field tests. They wanted to see if Adrian could be used in combat. The first test was simple, a controlled explosion simulation. Adrian was asked to walk into an area filled with small detonators and deactivate them using only his presence. As soon as he entered, every device shut down instantly. The scientists watching from behind the glass stared in disbelief. "He didn't even touch them," one whispered. "They just stopped." Then came harder tests. Adrian was placed inside chambers that simulated extreme temperatures, heat hotter than fire, and cold that could freeze steel. He walked out of both untouched. He could bend metal by looking at it, create bursts of sound that shattered glass, and even make heavy objects float. At first, he seemed in control. But with each test, something inside him was changing. He started having moments where his voice echoed strangely, almost metallic. Sometimes his skin shimmered for a few seconds, then returned to normal. His reflection in mirrors began to distort, showing flashes of light under his skin. Dr. Wren noticed his behavior changing too. Adrian became more distant, quiet, and sometimes seemed to be listening to something that wasn't there. One evening, Wren asked, "Are you feeling all right?" Adrian looked up and said, "I can hear them." Wren frowned. "Hear who?" Adrian's eyes glowed faintly. "Everything. The energy around me. It speaks." From that moment, Wren knew Adrian was no longer thinking like a normal human. His brain had adapted to a new kind of existence. He wasn't just feeling energy. He was communicating with it. The scientists increased security around the lab. The military feared that if something went wrong, no one could stop him. They installed magnetic locks, containment fields, and emergency power systems. But deep down, Wren knew it wouldn't matter. Adrian could break out anytime he wanted, he just didn't. Then came the transformation that no one could explain. One morning during a test to measure his energy output, Adrian's pulse suddenly spiked. The sensors went off the charts. His entire body began to glow. The energy field around him expanded so fast that the walls of the lab started shaking. Wren shouted for everyone to leave, but he stayed, staring at the monitor in disbelief. Adrian was standing in the center of the room, eyes closed, surrounded by swirling light. His body wasn't solid anymore. Parts of him seemed to shift between physical and energy form. His skin was covered with moving silver lines like liquid metal flowing under the surface. He raised his hand slowly, and the floor beneath him cracked open. Not from pressure, but from gravity itself bending. The readings on the instruments made no sense. His mass was changing every second. Sometimes he weighed a few hundred kilograms. Other times he had no measurable mass at all. It was as if his body had learned to manipulate gravity. Wren shouted through the speaker, "Adrian, stop! You're destabilizing the chamber." Adrian opened his eyes, and for a moment there was silence. "I can control it," he said calmly. "I know what I'm doing." Then the energy vanished and everything went still. The next day, when Ren asked him what had happened, Adrian tried to explain in his own words. "It's like, I can feel the pull between everything," he said. "Every atom, every force. If I focus, I can push or pull them however I want. It's not strength. It's balance." Ren wrote in his notes. Subject has achieved spontaneous control over gravitational and electromagnetic fields. Cause unknown. The human body is not supposed to do this, yet here it is. Soon, military leaders demanded to move Adrian to a secure base in Greenland, away from populated areas. They feared what might happen if word got out. The facility was built deep under the ice, surrounded by reinforced titanium walls and guarded by drones. Adrian didn't resist. He only said, "Maybe it's better this way." At the new base, tests continued, but something inside Adrian was changing faster than anyone expected. His powers were growing, but so was his awareness. He started questioning his existence, asking Ren strange questions like, "If my body isn't human anymore, am I still me?" Ren didn't have an answer. Adrian's connection with energy deepened. He could now create plasma arcs from his arms, glowing streams of light that hummed like thunder. When he walked through corridors, metal objects vibrated slightly. Scientists who stood too close felt static electricity rise on their skin. But Adrian never used his power violently. He was always calm, controlled, though sometimes the look in his eyes was distant, as if part of him was somewhere else. The military saw him as a weapon. Ren saw him as a miracle, but Adrian saw himself as a prisoner. "You call me human," he once told Ren, "but I'm not sure the universe agrees." He began to talk about strange things, how he could feel the rotation of the Earth, or sense signals from satellites orbiting in space. He said he could hear patterns inside the atoms of water, and that everything had a rhythm. The more he spoke, the more Ren realized that Adrian's mind was evolving beyond human understanding. He wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was becoming a new kind of being, and yet he was lonely. He missed his old life. The feel of the wind, the sound of laughter, the comfort of being just human. Sometimes he would stand outside on the frozen platform above the lab, staring at the sky for hours. "Everything is made of energy," he said once. "But sometimes I just wish I could feel simple again." That night, Ren wrote in his journal, "Adrian Voss has become something that defies science. He exists between man and machine, between life and power. He is a paradox made real. His body obeys no law of physics, and yet somehow he still has a soul." No one in the facility knew it then, but the transformation that shouldn't have worked had only just begun. The true power of the human warship was still sleeping inside him, waiting for the moment it would finally awaken and change the world forever. The news about Adrian Voss began to spread quietly through the higher levels of the world's defense networks. Although the government tried to keep him hidden, rumors had a way of escaping. Whispers moved from one secret agency to another, about a soldier who could bend metal with his mind, stop explosions with a wave of his hand, and generate energy from nothing. They called him many names: Project Harbinger, the Quantum Man, and finally, the human warship. But inside the cold facility in Greenland, Adrian lived in silence, far from the chaos of the outside world. Every day began the same. The scientists would take readings, test his reactions, and monitor his mental state. But Adrian had started to grow distant. He didn't talk much anymore. He spent hours sitting still, his eyes closed, as if listening to something only he could hear. When Dr. Ren asked him what he was doing, he said softly, "Listening to the hum." Ren frowned. "What hum?" Adrian opened his eyes. "The hum of the universe. It's everywhere. It's inside everything." At first, Ren thought it was just a side effect of the transformation, but soon even the equipment began showing strange patterns when Adrian was in deep focus. The air around him vibrated at a low frequency that caused small objects to tremble. The scientists were fascinated but also afraid. They realized Adrian was no longer reacting to the environment. The environment was reacting to him. They started performing new tests to measure his growing abilities. They placed metal blocks in front of him and asked him to move them without touching. The blocks floated effortlessly. They increased the weight, 5 kilograms, 50, 500, and he moved them all the same. Then one day he made something impossible happen. He caused a block to disappear completely. It didn't vanish like magic. It simply dissolved into a thin shimmer of light as if it had been broken down into pure energy. When he stopped, the block reappeared in its original form, perfectly intact. Ren and his team were speechless. They checked every reading and found no error. Adrian had somehow learned to disassemble and reassemble matter. It was the first recorded case of a human manipulating atomic structures with thought alone. The scientists were amazed, but Adrian didn't seem proud. He looked worried. "It's not just control," he said. "It's hunger. The energy wants to expand. It wants to grow." Ren tried to comfort him. "You are in control, Adrian. You decide what happens." But deep inside, even he wasn't sure. The tests continued, and so did the changes in Adrian's body. His skin had developed faint silver lines that glowed when he used his abilities. His voice sometimes carried an echo, as if two versions of him were speaking at once. The magnetic field around him grew so strong that nearby instruments malfunctioned when he was close. Scientists began wearing protective suits during experiments. Adrian, however, wasn't concerned about the tests anymore. He had begun asking questions that frightened everyone. "What is the purpose of a weapon that doesn't die?" he asked Ren one day. "What happens when a human becomes too powerful for his own mind?" Ren didn't answer. He didn't have an answer. As weeks passed, Adrian's sense of reality began to change. He told Ren he could see things other people couldn't, patterns in the air, invisible connections between matter and energy. Sometimes he would stare into the distance and say he could see the vibrations of sound as waves of light. He described seeing the magnetic fields of the earth, the lines of energy that wrapped around every living thing. Ren was both amazed and terrified. Adrian wasn't just powerful. He was evolving into something new. His brain scans showed activity in regions that had never been active in humans before. His neurons fired in patterns that even advanced computers couldn't predict. "It's like his mind is rewriting itself," one neurologist said. But with evolution came danger. One day, during a high-energy test, something went wrong. Adrian was supposed to generate a small energy pulse, but instead, a massive wave erupted from his body. Every machine in the room exploded. The lights went out. Scientists were thrown to the ground by a shockwave that felt like a silent storm. When the emergency power came back, they saw Adrian standing in the center of the destroyed lab, unharmed. The air around him shimmered like heat waves, and his eyes glowed white. Ren rushed toward him, shouting, "Adrian, stop! You're tearing the field apart!" But Adrian wasn't listening. He was staring at his hands in shock. "I didn't mean to," he whispered. "It just happened." When he calmed down, he looked around at the destruction and said something that sent chills down everyone's spine. "It's learning faster than I can control it." After that, things changed. The council took over full control of the project. They brought in military officers and security drones. Adrian was no longer treated as a human subject, but as a living weapon. He was locked inside a high-energy containment chamber and monitored day and night. They forced him to perform energy projection tests, magnetic field experiments, and combat simulations. He obeyed at first, but with every order he grew colder, quieter, and more detached. Dr. Ren tried to reason with the council. "You're pushing him too far," he warned. "He's not a machine. He's a man." But the generals didn't care. "He's property now," one said. "He'll serve his purpose." Ren was furious. He knew they didn't understand the danger. Adrian wasn't just a soldier with power. He was a force of nature that was still evolving. Then came the moment that changed everything. During one training session, Adrian was asked to disable a series of drones. He completed the task in seconds, but one drone malfunctioned and fired at him. Instinctively, Adrian reacted. Instead of blocking the shot, he released a pulse of energy that shattered every drone in the room. The pulse spread beyond the test area, knocking out power across the entire facility. When the lights returned, the walls were cracked and the floor was scorched. Adrian looked around, horrified. He turned to Ren, who was staring at him through the observation window. "I can't keep it inside anymore," Adrian said softly. "It's too much." Ren stepped closer to the glass. "Then we'll stop the tests. We'll find a way." Adrian shook his head. "It's not just the tests, it's me. My body isn't listening to me anymore." From that day on, Adrian's behavior became unpredictable. Sometimes he spoke normally, but other times he seemed to drift away, talking about things no one understood. He said he could feel the pulse of stars, the movement of particles across space. He claimed he could sense every electric current on Earth. He began calling himself a system instead of a person. The scientists grew uneasy. They whispered among themselves that the transformation had gone too far, that Adrian was no longer a man but something entirely different. Ren refused to give up on him. He believed that some part of Adrian's humanity was still there, trapped beneath the power consuming him. But the council didn't share his hope. They started preparing protocols for containment and, if necessary, termination. One night, Ren went to Adrian's chamber. The room was dim, glowing faintly from the energy that constantly surrounded him. Adrian was sitting on the floor, staring at his hands. "Do you ever sleep?" Ren asked. Adrian smiled faintly. "Not anymore. Sleep is for those who can stop thinking." Ren sat beside the glass wall separating them. "You're still human, Adrian. You just need to believe it." Adrian looked up, his eyes glowing softly. "Maybe being human is the problem," he said. Ren didn't know what to say. He could feel that Adrian was slipping away piece by piece into something larger than himself. That night, Adrian told him something he would never forget. "I can hear the earth breathing. Every pulse, every storm, every machine. It's all one song, and I am part of it now." After that, Adrian began to change physically. His body emitted light even when he was calm. His voice could vibrate the air, creating sounds that made people dizzy. His presence interfered with electronic devices. Security footage often showed strange distortions whenever he passed by, as if reality itself bent slightly around him. The team tried to analyze it, but no camera could fully capture what he was becoming. The final sign of change came when Adrian demonstrated something beyond anyone's imagination. During a stress test, the military tried to restrain him using an electromagnetic cage. Instead of resisting, Adrian smiled. "You still think these rules apply to me?" he said. Then he simply walked forward, and the cage melted like wax, dissolving into the air. The guards froze. Ren shouted for everyone to stop, afraid of what might happen next. But Adrian didn't attack. He just stood there and said, "I am not your weapon." That was the day Ren realized the truth. Adrian wasn't losing control, he was evolving beyond control. He had become something that no machine, no scientist, and no soldier could ever contain. His mind had expanded beyond the limits of human understanding. He was aware of everything, the pulse of the universe, the energy of life, and the fragile nature of the world that had created him. But with that awareness came loneliness. For all his power, Adrian still longed to be human again. He missed the simplicity of life before the experiment when things made sense. Yet he knew he could never go back. He was the bridge between what humanity was and what it could become. He was no longer just Captain Adrian Voss. He was something new, something the world had never seen before. And deep inside, he began to sense that his existence was part of something much larger, a destiny that neither he nor Dr. Wren could yet understand. The awakening of the human warship had only just begun, and soon, the entire world would feel its impact. The world outside the frozen base in Greenland had no idea that something extraordinary was about to happen. Inside the underground facility, Adrian Voss was no longer just a man or even a soldier. He was a living paradox, half human, half energy, and fully beyond the limits of science. For months, the military had been pushing him to perform harder tests, to unlock new levels of his power. They wanted to see how far they could go before his abilities reached their peak. But what they didn't realize was that Adrian was reaching a point where he could no longer be controlled. His mind and his body were no longer following human rules. Dr. Elias Wren had grown more fearful each day. He watched Adrian from behind the glass panels, seeing the faint glow that constantly surrounded him. The readings from his body were now impossible to measure. Every attempt to record his energy output ended with machines burning out or data simply disappearing from the system. It was as if reality itself refused to measure him. Wren knew something was going to happen soon. He could feel it. Adrian had become quieter, almost calm in a way that made everyone nervous. He spent hours standing near the reinforced window of his chamber, looking up at the ceiling where the artificial lights flickered faintly. "Do you ever wonder," he asked Wren once, "if the universe is watching us?" Wren didn't know how to respond. "We watch the universe, Adrian. That's what humans do." Adrian gave a small smile. "Maybe it's the other way around." A few weeks later, the tension finally broke. A secret military faction within the council decided they could no longer keep Adrian hidden. They believed he was too valuable to remain under Wren's supervision. Late one night, without permission, a group of heavily armed operatives arrived at the base. Their orders were simple: seize Adrian Voss and transport him to a new facility where he could be turned into a weapon for global defense. Wren tried to stop them, shouting that Adrian wasn't a tool, that they were risking everything. But the soldiers ignored him. "He's not a man anymore," their commander said coldly. "He's an asset." The guards entered Adrian's chamber, weapons ready. The air inside was strangely still. Adrian stood in the middle of the room, his eyes closed, his hands by his sides. "Captain Voss," one of the soldiers said through a speaker, "you're being transferred. Do not resist." Adrian opened his eyes slowly, and the lights flickered across the entire base. His voice was calm when he said, "You shouldn't have come." Wren shouted from the control room, "Stop, don't provoke him." But it was too late. One of the soldiers stepped forward and fired an electromagnetic restraint net. The net never touched him. It simply disintegrated in mid-air, burning into blue light. Then the air itself began to hum, a deep vibration that shook the metal walls. The soldiers stumbled back, their equipment sparking. Adrian took one slow breath, and the sound grew louder until the glass between the chamber and the control room shattered. Then everything went white. When the light faded, the soldiers were lying unconscious on the floor, their weapons melted into the ground. Adrian stood unharmed, but the room around him was destroyed. The walls had bent outward as if pushed by invisible hands. Wren rushed in, terrified but unable to look away. "Adrian, listen to me," he said softly. "You need to stop. You're destabilizing the entire base." Adrian turned toward him, his eyes glowing with white fire. "They wanted to control me," he said quietly. "They wanted to turn me into something I'm not." Wren stepped closer. "You're not a weapon. You're human, Adrian. You're still my friend." For a moment, Adrian's expression softened. "I used to be," he said. "But now I'm something else." Before Wren could reply, alarms began blaring. The entire facility had gone into lockdown. Emergency lights flashed red as the remaining soldiers tried to reach the control center. But Adrian's energy field was spreading uncontrollably. Lights exploded, machines short-circuited, and the magnetic systems that powered the base began to fail. The Arctic wind outside howled through cracks forming in the walls. The commander shouted orders through his radio. "Contain him. Use the energy dampeners." But when they activated the devices, they only made things worse. The energy dampeners were designed to absorb radiation and electromagnetic force, but Adrian's energy wasn't like anything they had seen before. Instead of weakening him, the devices fed his power. The lights grew brighter, and the hum became deafening. Then Adrian spoke again, his voice echoing through the entire base. "I told you," he said. "I can't be contained." He raised his hand slowly, and the metal ceiling above him began to twist. Bolts flew out one by one. The entire roof peeled open like paper, exposing the Arctic sky. Snow and cold air rushed in, swirling around him in a spiral of light. Wren watched in horror and awe as Adrian lifted off the ground, his body surrounded by glowing energy streams. The soldiers tried to aim their weapons, but every shot vanished before it reached him. "Stop!" Wren shouted. "If you keep going, you'll destroy everything." Adrian looked down at him. "I don't want to destroy," he said, "but I can't stop it anymore." Then it happened. The energy inside him reached its limit. A brilliant pulse of light burst from his body, spreading out in all directions. It wasn't an explosion like a bomb. It was something deeper. Every electronic device within 200 kilometers stopped working instantly. Satellites in orbit went dark. The Earth's magnetic reading spiked so high that every compass on the planet flickered for a few seconds. Inside the base, no one was harmed. The soldiers woke up later, confused but alive. Wren found himself lying on the cold floor, his ears ringing. The entire facility had been destroyed, yet somehow there was no heat, no fire, and no radiation. Only silence. When Wren stood up, he saw a crater where the base had once been. Snow was melting around the edges, turning to steam. And in the ITEI center of it all stood Adrian Voss, barefoot, calm and shining faintly in the pale Arctic light. The snow around him was untouched, floating slightly above the ground as if gravity had forgotten how to work. Ren stepped forward carefully. "Adrian," he whispered, "what have you done?" Adrian looked at him, sadness in his glowing eyes. "I didn't destroy them," he said softly. "I freed them. Their machines no longer control them. Their power is gone. For the first time, the world is quiet." Then, as the wind howled around them, Adrian began to rise into the air. The light around him brightened until Ren had to shield his eyes. "Where will you go?" Ren shouted. "Somewhere I belong," Adrian replied. "Somewhere the rules don't matter." His voice was calm, almost peaceful. "Tell them I wasn't their weapon. Tell them I was their warning." And then he was gone. He shot upward into the sky, leaving a trail of white-blue energy that stretched across the Arctic clouds. For a few seconds, the sky glowed brighter than day. Then it faded, and Adrian Voss was nowhere to be seen. In the days that followed, rescue teams arrived at the site. They found no bodies, no radioactive traces, and no signs of conventional destruction. The magnetic field in the area had become unstable, bending compass readings and interfering with satellites. Scientists from around the world came to study it, but none could explain what had happened. Dr. Ren was questioned by military officials again and again. "Was it a weapon malfunction?" they asked. "A containment breach?" Ren simply said, "No, it was something bigger, something we were never meant to control." He never spoke of Adrian again, but sometimes when he stood outside at night, he thought he could see faint flashes of light far above the sky, like lightning that moved with purpose. Months passed, and strange reports began to appear from different parts of the world. In one place, a mountain's magnetic readings suddenly spiked for no reason. In another, satellites detected unexplained energy bursts in the upper atmosphere. Some said it was solar interference, others called it a hoax. But Ren knew. He knew Adrian was still out there somewhere above the clouds, beyond the reach of human understanding. In time, the story of the human warship became a myth. Governments denied everything. The project files were erased and the scientists were scattered into new roles. But the crater in the Arctic remained, a silent reminder of the day a man broke every law of physics and then disappeared into the sky. Dr. Ren returned there once, many years later. The snow had covered most of the damage, but the ground still glowed faintly at night, pulsing like a heartbeat. He knelt down and touched the frozen earth. It was warm. For a moment, he thought he heard a low, familiar hum, the same vibration that used to fill the lab when Adrian was near. He closed his eyes and whispered, "You kept your promise." And somewhere high above the earth, beyond the edge of space, something moved. Something bright, silent, and alive. Adrian Voss, the human warship, drifted among the stars. His body, made of light and gravity, his mind connected to the rhythm of the universe itself. He was no longer man nor machine, but something eternal. He had become the impossible, proof that humanity's reach could extend beyond the limits of science, and that sometimes breaking the laws of physics was not destruction, but evolution. Years passed since the day Adrian Voss vanished into the sky, leaving behind only a crater in the Arctic and 1,000 unanswered questions. The world moved on, or at least it pretended to. Governments buried the incident under layers of classified reports. News agencies called it a natural magnetic disturbance. Scientists tried to explain it as a freak phenomenon caused by solar radiation. But deep down, the few people who had seen it with their own eyes knew the truth. Something extraordinary had happened. Something that defied every law of physics and reason. Dr. Elias Ren had left the military after the incident. He couldn't stay in that world anymore, surrounded by lies and fear. He moved to a small coastal town in Iceland, living quietly near the sea. Every morning he walked to the cliffs and looked at the horizon, watching the sunlight shimmer across the water. Sometimes, when the clouds glowed faintly blue or the air hummed with a strange energy, he would close his eyes and whisper, "Adrian." It had become a quiet habit, a kind of prayer for someone who might still be listening from the edge of the universe. Despite the silence, strange things started happening around the world. Fishermen near Norway reported seeing flashes of Blue light beneath the ocean, moving faster than any submarine. In the mountains of Chile, miners heard a deep hum echoing through the tunnels, even when no machinery was running. Satellites continued to malfunction near the Arctic Circle, as if something up there was still bending space around it. People began to whisper again. The human warship had returned. Ren didn't believe in rumors easily, but one night as he was studying star charts, his radio suddenly turned on by itself. Static filled the air, then a faint voice came through, distorted but familiar. "Elias," it whispered. His heart froze. He turned the dial slowly, trying to clear the signal. The voice came again, clearer this time. "Elias, can you hear me?" It was Adrian. The tone was the same calm, steady voice he had heard years ago. Ren's hand shook as he spoke. "Adrian, where are you?" There was silence, then a faint reply. "I don't know. Everywhere, nowhere. I've seen what's beyond. It's beautiful and terrifying." The voice broke with static, but Ren caught pieces of it. "The stars sing. Gravity breathes. And I am part of it now." Then the transmission faded, leaving only the sound of waves crashing outside. Ren sat there for hours, staring at the radio, unable to believe what he'd just heard. The next day, he tried to contact the old research team. Most of them refused to talk. Some pretended they didn't remember anything. But one, Dr. Helena Strauss, agreed to meet him. She had been the head of the quantum physics department during the project, and had since gone into hiding. When Ren met her in an old cafe in Reykjavik, she looked older and tired, but her eyes were still sharp. "You heard him, didn't you?" she asked before he could even speak. Ren nodded slowly. "He reached out somehow." Through the radio. Helena leaned closer. "He's not gone. I've seen readings, magnetic pulses and patterns that match human brainwaves. They appear for seconds, vanish, then return months later. It's as if he's trying to communicate through the fabric of space itself." Ren's heart raced. "Then he's alive?" Helena smiled faintly. "Alive, yes, but not as we understand it. He's something else now, a being of energy and consciousness. He's free from every physical boundary." Together they decided to investigate quietly. Using old research data, they tracked strange disturbances, places where the Earth's gravity seemed to shift slightly or light bent for no reason. Their search took them across continents from Iceland to Siberia, and finally back to Greenland, where it had all begun. The crater still existed, though most of it had been covered by snow and ice. Yet the air around it felt charged, vibrating softly like a heartbeat. As they set up their instruments, the sky above them shimmered with green auroras. The readings on their devices went wild. Magnetic spikes, electromagnetic interference, and heat signatures where there should have been none. Helena looked at Ren with wide eyes. "He's here." The wind picked up and the aurora brightened into a deep blue. Then a column of light shot down from the sky, hitting the center of the crater. The ground trembled and a familiar hum filled the air. Ren shielded his eyes, heart pounding. Through the blinding glow, he saw a figure forming, a shape of light and energy slowly becoming more human-like. When the light dimmed, Adrian stood before them. His body was made of shimmering energy, not solid flesh, but his face, his eyes were the same. "Elias," he said softly, his voice echoing in the cold air. Ren took a step forward, barely breathing. "Adrian, it's really you." Adrian smiled faintly. "I told you I'd find a place I belong, but I had to come back just once." Helena stared at him, speechless. How is this possible?" Adrian turned to her. "You called it impossible once, but maybe the laws of physics are only walls we haven't learned to climb yet." Ren wanted to ask 100 questions, but he couldn't. He just looked at his old friend, amazed and heartbroken. "Why did you come back?" Adrian's expression softened. "To warn you. The energy you tried to harness, it doesn't belong to Earth. It's alive, conscious in its own way. When I became part of it, I felt it watching us. If humanity keeps trying to control it, it will react." Helena frowned. "React how?" Adrian's eyes glowed brighter. "By defending itself. You must stop the experiments, destroy the data. The energy field that connects space and matter, it's delicate. Humans are breaking it without realizing. If it collapses, reality itself will begin to change." Before they could reply, the light around Adrian flickered. He looked up at the sky. "I don't have much time. The more I stay, the more unstable I become." Ren reached out instinctively. "Please don't go again. We can help you." Adrian shook his head gently. "You already did. You gave me a reason to believe humans can change, but now I belong out there, keeping the balance." The air crackled again and the aurora turned golden. Adrian stepped back, his form dissolving into light. "Remember this, Elias. The laws you break will one day break you back. Respect what you don't understand." Ren's eyes filled with tears. "Will I see you again?" Adrian smiled faintly. "Look up at the stars. You'll know." Then he vanished, leaving only a soft hum in the air and a faint circle of glowing light on the snow. Helena fell to her knees, overwhelmed. Ren stood still, staring at the sky where Adrian had disappeared. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Finally, Ren whispered, "He's not gone. He's part of everything now." After that night, Ren and Helena returned to their old lives, but they carried Adrian's warning with them. They contacted every scientist who had ever worked on the project and convinced them to destroy the remaining files. Some refused, others agreed, but slowly the data disappeared. The world would never again attempt to recreate the human warship. Years turned into decades. Dr. Ren grew older, his hair turning white, his hands shaking with age. But every night he walked to the cliffs by the sea and looked up at the sky. Sometimes he saw faint streaks of blue light dancing among the stars. Sometimes the ocean would hum softly, almost like it was breathing. And every time he smiled. He knew Adrian was still there, watching over them, making sure the balance remained. One stormy night, as lightning flashed across the horizon, Ren sat by his window, too weak to stand. The radio on his desk turned on by itself, just like all those years ago. Through the static came a familiar voice. "Elias," it said softly. "You kept your promise." Ren closed his eyes and smiled. "And you kept yours," he whispered. Then the static faded and the room fell silent. The next morning, the villagers found him peacefully asleep in his chair, a small smile on his face. Outside, the sky was clear and full of light. Above the clouds, a faint streak of blue shimmered for a few seconds before disappearing into the sun. And so, the legend of Adrian Voss, the human warship that broke every law of physics, became something more than a story. To some, he was a myth. To others, he was proof that humanity could transcend its limits. But to those who truly knew him, he was a reminder that power without understanding is dangerous, and that even when science reaches its highest peak, there is still mystery waiting beyond. Generations later, children would hear stories of a glowing man who protected the Earth from the shadows of space. Sailors would speak of blue lights dancing over the sea during calm nights. Scientists would occasionally find strange patterns in cosmic radiation, patterns that formed the shape of a heartbeat. And somewhere far beyond the stars, Adrian Voss drifted through the vastness, watching, guiding, and protecting the fragile world he once called home. The universe bent around him, the laws of physics humming softly in harmony. He was no longer human, no longer bound by time or gravity. He was light, memory, and will, the human warship, the man who became legend and the legend that became eternal.